Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Champagne, and I am the Marketing Specialist here at Enterprise DB. I will be your host for today for our webinar, Postgres Databases in Minutes with the EDB Postgres Cloud Database Service. I'm joined by Marc Linster, Senior Vice President of Product Development here at EDB. Before we get started, I just want to go through a few housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded. The lines are currently muted. We will be answering questions at the end of the session, so please feel free to submit a question if you have one. If we don't get to your question during our webinar, we will try to answer them offline via email. Today's session is scheduled for 1 hour. We expect the presentation to last about 50 minutes with about 10 minutes for Q&A. And now, without further ado, here is Marc Linster.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. So the way we're going to do this today is I'm going to spend just a few minutes on who is EDB. Promise it won't take more than 5 minutes. And then we're going to dive into EDB Postgres Cloud Database Service. I'll spend most of that time just with a hands-on demo and showing you exactly how you can start using this today without spending a dime. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the migration from Oracle to Postgres. And again, I'm going to give you a hands-on migration demo and show you exactly how you can do this, and really that there's no excuse to not at least give it a try. So that's how we're going to spend the next 50 minutes. Any questions that you may have, put them into the chat box, and afterwards, Rachel and I will go through them. Any questions we can't answer, we'll follow up afterwards via email. Okay, so first, who is EDB? We're really the largest company involved in the development of Postgres. So we've been in the Postgres community for a long time. Company has been in business since 2004 and has been recognized for the last 5+ years by Gartner and Forrester as a leader in the open source RDBMS space. We got offices worldwide, and we're really the largest contributor to the Postgres community. So I said over 4,000 customers, and what's important is when you look at the logos on here, key is that we work with the Fortune 500 and the Global 2000. Those are really our focus customers, and that reflects a lot on our focus on Postgres and the things that we care about in Postgres, all focused on cloud, higher scalability, greater performance, and all the other enterprise requirements that may not be that important if you are in a smaller company, but they matter a whole lot to the type of customers that we have listed here on this page. I mentioned before that EDB Postgres is the leading Postgres distribution globally, but it's also the one that has been recognized by Gartner since 2013, since Gartner restarted the Magic Quadrant for Relational Database Management Services. EDB Postgres has been in that quadrant persistently. One thing that is really important, if you look at the history of this quadrant, today EDB Postgres is the only open source based relational database management system that is left in this space. All the others, like Microsoft and Oracle, etc., are obviously based on proprietary distributions. Okay, so that's really something that you need to keep in mind when you think about moving towards an open source relational database system. But we're not just strong on the commercial side. We have a very significant team that has been globally recognized as contributors to the open source community. It starts on the left with people that are leading the Postgres, the strategy of the Postgres community, such as Bruce Momsen and Dave Page, who are members of the Postgres core team. And then major contributors such as Andres, Robert, Amit, Thomas, and obviously Devram Gunduz, who produces the RPMs and the Debian packages for Postgres, etc. They're all full-time team members of EDB. And then a large number of named contributors. We have a lot more people who contribute to Postgres, PG admin, PG pool, but these are just the folks whose names you will find as named contributors on those websites. Folks come to us, or customers come to us because of cost. They come to us because they want a cheaper, more flexible alternative. They want have something that works better in their financial plans. They come to us because it's cheaper to operate. It's got a huge ROI. But the reason they stay with Postgres is because of innovation, because it runs on everything. It speaks every language. I mean, inside the Postgres database, you can use Tcl, Python, Java, obviously PLPG-SQL, but inside the EDB Postgres, you can also use PLSQL. You can use the Oracle packages, etc. It works everywhere. It runs on Windows. It runs on all the major Linux distributions. It runs on Linux on Power. It runs on, it works everywhere. And then it's highly scalable, vertical scale and horizontal scale. Vertical scale, obviously, for transactional systems. Read scale scales very, very well for read scalability. So it's the leading open source relational database out there. People adopt it, or people consider it because of cost. They stay with it. They love it because of the innovation, because of the versatility. What I'm going to talk about now is the EDB Postgres Cloud Database Service that we have announced last Tuesday at AWS reInvent. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview before I dive into a demo. It's an on-demand service. You're going to be up and running with Postgres in the AWS cloud in minutes. It's flexible, meaning it's pay-as-you-go pricing. It's compatible. The Oracle compatibility that EDB has based much of its business on is fully included in this distribution of Postgres, meaning you can run PLSQL, you can run the interfaces that you know from Oracle. You can do the JDBC extensions from Oracle, the ODBC extensions from Oracle. There's an equivalent to OCI, etc. You can use all of that in the EDB Postgres Cloud Database Service. So other capabilities, it provides out of the box. It provisions highly resilient clusters. It's integrated with what we call our migration portal, which I will show you in the second demo today. Every database that it configures is automatically set up as a highly resilient database, so high availability, clustering, etc. is immediately available. Very important is it is the same Postgres that you would deploy on premises. If you look at the AWS distributions, RDS Postgres is a significant fork of Postgres, and you can't run it in your own data center or some other environment. This Postgres is the same Postgres that would run on premises or on Azure or on Alibaba or no matter where. Also, when you configure a cluster on CDS, you can select predefined templates for a highly read scalable service, for a vertical scalable service, for a QA service, for a development setup, etc. So those are predefined template sets that you can choose from, or you can just do it manually, and I'll show you how to do it manually during the demo. And it has important enterprise features immediately built in: load balancing, automatic failover, data encryption, elastic scale out. Those things are there for you right out of the box and don't require complex configuration. Support immediately there, and for those of you that have worked with other, let's say, cloud Postgres distributions, you may understand that their strength is not necessarily the support of Postgres. We have been the Postgres company for 10 plus years, and when you use our CDS service, the standard support is part of what you're getting. So immediately when you sign up here, you are entitled for support for Postgres, not just support for the underlying platform, where you can interact with our Postgres experts. Those are real people. They're not bots. They're ready to help and answer any questions. They're there for you 24/7. Important is you can try this for free. The first $50 of any kind of usage that you will incur here is part of your trial setup, so it doesn't cost you a dime. If you get in touch with us, you can be part of our Premier Beta, which will give you an additional $200 in free billing credits. So you can really run significant evaluations with very large clusters and for a significant amount of time. Just get in touch with us. The email address will be at the end of this webinar, and we can increase your beta credit to really make this work a little differently. So now let me dive into a demo so that I can show you what this looks like. I'm going to go to my virtual machine here, and I hope it has not fallen asleep. Okay, so I'm going to go to edbpostgres.com, and here you go to the Cloud Database Service, which is right now in beta. We've announced it last week at AWS reInvent. You can see right here our chat support, and I'm just going to say, hey, it's Mark. Excuse me. It's Mark, and this is my email address, and I'm going to start to chat, and one of our people will come online here to provide advice to how this works, right? So there's a real person here in our office who would work with you at all times to make sure that any kind of questions get answered immediately. Let me dive in here, and usually what you would do is you'd set up a simple account with EDB, not a big deal. What I'll do now is I will log in here first with an account that is not set up, just to show you what that looks like. The very first step that will happen is we will ask you for a credit card information, but your credit card will not be charged until you've used up your $50 credit, or if you got in touch with us, until you used your $250 credit for the preferred beta, for the Premier Beta. We're going to log out again and log in as somebody who's already set up in here, so we don't need to go through the credit card setup. I'm just going to log in with my company account here, and you're going to see what the Cloud Database Service looks like. It's a very simple setup. Okay, so very first thing that we're going to do is I'll show you the concept of teams and users. Other services are more geared towards individuals. As I said before, we are working with very large companies globally, and so those companies always have team structures with different roles, etc. The same thing you can do in EDB's Cloud Database Service. So I've set up here a number of different teams. So I've got a QA team, a production team, a DevOps team, and you can see they have different roles. For example, the finance team, all they can do is see the billing aspects, so the aspects that pertain to the current usage and to any kind of open invoices, and I'll show you that in a minute. The teams that have provisioning roles, they can set up separate clusters that they don't share with each other, meaning the DevOps team can provision their own clusters, the production team their own clusters, the QA team their own clusters, and those clusters don't overlap. The admin team can do everything. So let me just show you what the billing aspect here looks like. So I can just go to my account tab here, and I can look at my current usage. My current usage shows you all the details. So for example, here, I've been using M5 4x extra large. I probably used those for about 9 hours. So, I'm about to run up a bill of $15. I have not used any T3 mediums, M5 2x extra large, etc. You can also look at my invoice here, and I'll just, pull up my invoice from the last month for my account here, and you would see on there that I've incurred charges of that was about $442 minus my $50 first use credit, so I got charged $392. So after we looked a little bit at how all the financial aspects, the team management aspects, etc. work, let's dive into the actual provisioning of databases. Right now, we're set up in two AWS regions, US East and US West. New regions will follow soon, and we can talk about that during the Q&A. I'm going to dive into this region here and show you what this looks like. So right now, this is my dashboard for that region. I have one instance set up. I can dive into that instance, and it'll show me here that it is set up in US East. It has a certain name for the cluster, etc. Right? It runs in a certain subnet. This is the port that's open. This is the status of the cluster, and I'll just try to make this a little bigger. Okay, and it also tells me that I really need to perform or updates are available for that cluster, and that should really apply them. So let me just, for kicks and giggles, now say, okay, we're going to go make a new cluster. I'm going to make a new cluster. As I said before, I can launch it from a template, so I can use a predefined template, and here are my different templates that I can use. So I can use a departmental Postgres. I can use something that is just for developers. I can use something that is more focused towards read scaling. Okay, so for example, if I want to do a read scale cluster, then I'll get a lot more replicas in my cluster. So I'll have a master with 3 replicas, and they will be automatically distributed across different availability zones. I'll show you how to set up something that is a manual cluster. So I'm going to manually define a cluster here. And so my very first operation here is to say, I'm going to say, okay, what's my cluster name? I'm going to call it webinar demo. And I can here say what are my engines that I want to deploy. And I'm going to deploy, Postgres Advanced Server 11. I'm going to try to deploy it on something that has a little bit more oomph, so an M5 extra large. Those are the standard AWS machines. I'm going to say, well, I really need some read scalability here and some failover. And, I'll need about 5 gigs of storage. I want that storage to be encrypted. I want it to be EBS optimized. And I can set here, what my password is. I'm going to be really secure today. And then I'm going to go to next step here. And here it tells me, okay, which availability zone in this region would you like to choose? I'm just going to use an automatic distribution to the availability zones. What it's going to do is it's going to put the master and the replicas into different availability zones so that you get automatically a higher availability. I mean, the whole region would need to go down in order for you to be impacted. It's going to create a new subnet for me. Next thing I'm going to do is set up my white labeling rules. My white labeling rules here are sitter rules, and in here I could pick specific addresses, specific ranges, etc. to make the different ports available. 2 ports are available. One is the load balancer. The load balancer port is important because it will distribute queries, both reads. It will distribute the read queries across the members of the cluster, and it will make sure that all write transactions go to the master of the cluster. So I can choose to connect to the load balancer, or I could connect directly to one of the members of the cluster. Both things are available. Okay, I'm just going to set up a sitter rule for my load balancing port, and this is not a good practice. I'm going to leave it wide open. Don't do that. Okay, and then I'm going to say, hey, what's my backup setup here? So, for example, I'm going to say I'm going to have a daily backup run at midnight, and I'm going to enable archiving so that I can do point-in-time recovery. And I'm going to start launching my cluster. So what's going to happen now is, a new cluster, in this case called webinar demo, is being initialized, and it's running in the background. Okay. While this initialization is proceeding, I can see here that it's currently provisioning the virtual machines, then the high availability infrastructure, then the databases, etc. Okay. So each one of these is going to come online, and I'll show you later on during the migration demo when we come back a little bit what this all looks like. Oops, it looks like I am not. I don't have enough storage space right now, so probably not my whole cluster is going to come online. I'll probably have to try later on to add additional replicas. Okay. Okay. So basically, you can see here all the elements of this service. You can see here's a backup that was run for me on my demo 1 cluster yesterday evening. I can also go back to my dashboard here and look at my user guide, my instructions, etc. One important element here is, if I go back to the overall console, is the access to support and help. Okay, so there's a help tab with FAQ, etc., basic instructions. And there is availability to what we call Postgres Rocks, which is our support forum. So as soon as you go to Postgres Rocks, you will be logged in immediately, and we can go to what we call the Knowledge Cloud. And the Knowledge Cloud has a number of articles in it that help you address questions and figure out, okay, how do I connect to my database using JDBC? How do I move an existing database to the Postgres Cloud, etc. Okay. And then, as I said, you also have access to our support operation at that point in time. Let me just go back here. Yeah, I think those are about all the capabilities that are there. Very, very easy to use. And what's important is this immediately sets up a highly available cluster with replicas, etc. for you. So let me go back to the presentation and show you other parts that need to come together in order to make this migration easy. Okay, so first, before we go into that, we've only been up and running for a relatively short time. We get some really positive feedback already. And the feedback focuses on the one side, the Oracle compatibility, which is important to many of our customers who come from Oracle. And on the other side, because EDB's Cloud Database Service gives you full access to all of Postgres, right? That's a big deal for somebody who is really a Postgres DBA. The other Postgres services, if you look at it, you're actually not the administrator of your own database. Somebody else is, the operator of the managed service. You don't have all the access to the configuration options, etc. In EDB's Cloud Database Service, you're in charge. Means you can make more mistakes, but also if you know what you're doing, you have a lot more configuration options, a lot more control. So now let me dig a little bit into Oracle compatibility. Oracle compatibility is really important for us because many of our large customers are currently running on Oracle and they're looking for an alternative both for on-premise but also in the cloud. They want an alternative where they don't have to leave all their old investments behind. When we're looking at migrations from Oracle or SQL Server or anything else, well, some things appear very, very easy, and some things indeed are very easy, such as the migration of the schema or the migration of the data. That's actually quite easy because those are highly standardized, and even Oracle had few deviations as far as schema definition and data went. But then when you look at the code, so PLSQL and the packages, that's where Oracle obviously is very different from standard Postgres. And that's why we created EDB Postgres Advanced Server that has native Oracle compatibility built in. But then in order to go all the way, you need schema, data, code, and interfaces. Interfaces being ODBC, JDBC, .NET, and an equivalent to OCI and potentially Pro-C. And that's really what EDB has put together. And that's why this is really the best way to move from Oracle onto Postgres, because you can move your schema, your data, your code, and your interfaces. And in the large number of migrations, the time of the migration is only defined by how long it takes to get the data from A to B and how long it takes to do the functional and performance verifications. So what have we done inside the database to make this work? Well, we've replicated many of the extensions that Oracle has created, such as Decode, NVL, NVL2, etc. PLSQL support is in place natively. This is not a layer on top of Postgres. This is not a translation. This is not an interpretation. This is a native C-based implementation inside Postgres. That's why it works quite well and very fast. Tools. Every Oracle DBA uses SQL Plus. Well, we have created EDB Plus to make that migration much easier. Every Oracle DBA uses SQL Loader. Well, in EDB Postgres, you have EDB Loader. You have an Oracle-like data dictionary. So again, that's really important for applications that look at the dictionary before they present forms, etc. Wait states are available. Key packages, such a large number of the DBMS packages and the UTL packages, are also available. Data types that you know, like blobs and clobs, are available. Drivers are available. And then since EPAS 11, so EDB Postgres Advanced Server 11, which came out last week, we also support Pragma Autonomous Transaction. So again, migrations from Oracle are rather straightforward and don't take a whole lot of time. I talked about the database drivers. Many people, when they talk about database migrations, they're not thinking about the database drivers. But the database drivers play a key role because they are the interface from the application code to the database. And the applications, when they're written for Oracle, make certain assumptions about things that are available. The most obvious one is in-out parameters. Okay? And in-out parameters is something that you need to have in order to talk to an Oracle stored procedure. So if you want to minimize or even eliminate any kind of changes to your database, then you need to be able to handle those capabilities. So when you think about migrations, it's not just about the schema and the data, but it's also the stored procedures, so the functionality defined inside the database and the interfaces from the database to the application. So key to doing a successful migration and successfully migrating to the cloud into a service like EDB CDS is to understand what should be your target. We know statistically from surveys of our customers that over 50% of all migrations require no changes or really slight changes to the application. Another 35% need some moderate changes. And then there is a small percentage that requires substantial changes. The key here is to identify quickly the databases, the Oracle databases, that require no changes at all or just very slight changes. I'll give you a little bit of a roadmap for that. What makes a good migration candidate? Because many of you on the call here will manage hundreds or even thousands of databases. The question is, how do you quickly pick good migration targets without doing a lot of work? So here are the outward signs or indicators for a good migration candidate. If the application uses an ORM, so Hibernate or Spring, if you have the ability to modify the source code, if procedures and functions were written in PLSQL, now you may say, well, what else should they be written in? Well, in Oracle, you can also write them in Java. If they're written in Java, they will likely use Oracle-specific classes, and then the migration becomes a lot more involved. Together with the ability to modify the source code, if the application developers or the team is still around so you can use them for functional verification and for performance verification, that's really important. If the app for some reason must have flashback, that's a bad indicator because there is no good equivalent for flashback in Postgres. But if the DBA team claims that they need flashback, question it a little bit, figure out why they need flashback, and see if a flashback would actually be needed in Postgres. So these are high-level indicators that something might be a good migration target. So a more difficult target, what are the things to look out for? Well, it does become more involved when it becomes a C-based interface, so OCI as an interface. Spatial, Oracle Spatial has an equivalent in Postgres, it's PostGIS. I personally believe that PostGIS is a better solution than Oracle Spatial, but there is no simple one-on-one translation from Oracle Spatial to PostGIS. So it's still a worthy migration target, but it's not going to happen with a click of a button. There are certain Oracle extensions for .NET and ODBC that are not as well supported in EDB Postgres as JDBC. JDBC is used a whole lot, so we have a lot of experience there and a very rich vocabulary that makes the migration of Oracle-based applications much, much easier. It becomes more difficult when people start using the Pro-C interface, not because Pro-C is more difficult, but typically because Pro-C-based applications tend to be older, and it tends to be much harder to find somebody who still knows how to use them. Look, when stored procedures are written in Java, that's difficult, not because Postgres doesn't support Java. Postgres does support Java with PL/Java, but these stored procedures typically tend to leverage Oracle-specific classes. And if somebody must have rack capabilities and flashback capabilities, not because rack or flashback is used for DBA convenience, but if there are business processes or business requirements that really need to have, let's say, the scalability, the absolute scalability of rack, or things like TAF, transparent application failover, or they must have flashback for certain operational processes. Those are typically more difficult candidates. So look for the easy things and focus on the easy things. Do the easy things first. Our experience shows that over 50% of what runs on Oracle today can easily be migrated to EDB Postgres, and easily meaning days, a few weeks, including performance testing. Focus on those things and then start working towards the more difficult applications, maybe when they come up for an architecture refresh or so. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over again to a demo. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is how the migration works. Okay. Very first thing I'm going to do is going to log out here, and I'm going to go to the EDB migration portal, and I'm going to show you all the components of the migration portal. EDB migration portal uses the same login that we looked at just before, so there's nothing new required. EDB migration portal also is a free service, so you don't have to pay anything to use it. In the EDB migration portal, there is access to a knowledge base and also to a very rich getting started guide. Okay, the way the EDB migration portal works is you run an extraction script against your Oracle database. You create a project in the EDB migration portal. You upload the extracted DDL. You run an assessment, and then you load that into a Postgres database. So the very first thing you would do is you'd look at the quick start guide. You can look at the video that walks through everything that I'm going to talk about now. You can look at the DDL extractor guide, or you can just download the DDL extractor. Okay, the DDL extractor is a PLSQL script, and I'm going to show you that PLSQL script here. I loaded it into Toad, and that PLSQL script is completely readable for you, so that you can go through it and make sure that when you run this against your Oracle database, that we don't do anything untoward. Also, the extraction that this generates, again, is a text file. So I'll show you how to inspect that text file before you upload it. Again, just to make sure that, that you're not sending us anything that you're not completely aware of. So for the sake of this example, what I've done is I've taken the Oracle HR database, right? It's a very simple example with the data. It has some stored procedures in it. I'll show you how those work in EDB Postgres. And I've also created a little error example. I created this error example because our migration capabilities are so good that with the HR example, there is actually, it just works right out of the box. So I created artificially an error just to be able to show you those capabilities of the migration portal. What I did in this error here, and for those of you that know Postgres, it's quite obvious. I've created a column that's called partition. In Postgres, partition is a reserved word, and reserved words cannot just simply be used for column names or table names. They have to be quoted. Okay, so that's the error that I'm going to produce. So after I've downloaded my extraction script here, I'm just going to run it. I'm going to run it here via SQL+, and you can just run it from the command line too. Okay, so I'm going to extract the HR schema, keep it locally, and so my script runs through my Oracle database that I have installed here on my virtual machine, extracts everything, and creates for me an extraction script. I'll go take a look at that extraction script as soon as this is finished. Okay, indexes is about the last thing it's going to do. And views. Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go take a look at at the data that it extracted. Okay. That up. And show you what that DDL looks like that we have just extracted. Oops. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. Clicked on the wrong thing. It's trying to load Toad Edge, which is the latest version of Quest Toad for Postgres. That's not what I wanted to show. So you can see here that what we've produced is just straight DDL. You can inspect that before you upload it. To our migration portal. You can see here my my error example that I have created. Okay, let me just get out of Toad Edge here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that extraction and I'm going to load it into the migration portal. In the migration portal, I'm going to go create a project, and my project here is going to be called webinar. Okay, and this is a demo. This is a demo project for today. This is not my good day here. Just going to call it test. Maybe that's the problem. Okay. So I have my test project here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload my DDL that I've just created. Yep, here's my. So you can see that same DDL that I just ran with all the data in it. Okay, you can see here my my error example, and I'm going to run the assessment. Okay. So in this assessment here, you can now see that what I did is I have 36 constructs, or 37 constructs. 36 passed OK. Some were repaired. Repaired means they had to be made. We had to make changes to the Oracle DDL to make it work smoothly in EDB Postgres, and I'll show you what that looks like. So, for example, here we have an error handler that replaced a certain syntax with something else. We're always documenting what we're doing, so there's no surprises for the DBA. But some minor syntax differences. That's how we overcome them. I'll show you here in the table, so you can see I have my error example that, as expected, has an error near the syntax, near the keyword partition. I'm going to go into the editor here, and it tells me, hey, this is not compatible with the Postgres syntax. I'm going to go into my knowledge base, and I'm going to type in here, hey, you got an issue with partition. It tells me here an error occurs due to reserved words, and you can see in the knowledge base here that, yep, this is a known issue. And what you do just simply is you put double quotes around the word partition. So I'm going to go back to my migration portal, and I will do exactly that. I will put double quotes around partition, and then I will run the assessment again. And now you will see that, yep, everything is passed, so we got a completely green light. I can now export my DDL. I'll export my DDL. I'll just export this one schema, and I'll put it into test HR. Now, what I have here is now pgadmin, and pgadmin is connected to the demo cluster that I created before. And in pgadmin, I will now go to this database, and I will open a query tool, and I will load in that modified DDL that I just created. Oops, where is it? Okay, so this is what I just created. I'll load that in there, and I'm just gonna execute that. And now what I have done here is in the schema in this database, I will have created this schema HR with all my tables and my stored procedures, etc., that I before had in Oracle. Last step I'm going to do is I'm going to push the data across. Okay, I'm going to run the window. I'm going to run the EDB migration toolkit to just move the data across. It's going to do that in a few seconds here. So now what I have in here, I can go look at my tables here. I can look at all my data. So basically, I have all my data that came over from Oracle. So I moved my schema, I moved my data, and now the last thing I'm going to show you is that we also moved the stored procedures, and that the stored procedures work. So you'll see in here in this job history table that obviously, there's an entry in here for every employee. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in one of the I'm going to bring in stored procedure. I'm going to run a stored procedure in here. Running that stored procedure here, basically, and I'm going to go back to my job history data. And in this job history data, you will now see that I've actually added data. So my stored procedure ran successfully, okay, because I added something to this table. Here I added this record. So basically what I've shown you is that you can migrate schema, data, and stored procedures, all of that in a really short time. Now, I know that the Oracle HR database is a very, very simplistic example, completely aware of that, but it shows you as a concept that schema migration, data migration, and migration of stored procedures from Oracle to EDB Postgres Cloud Database Service is actually something that is very, very well supported and very easily done. So again, I want to just summarize here at the end that the EDB Cloud Database Service is something that's available for you on demand, it's flexible, and it's Oracle compatible. You have a default credit where you don't even need to talk to us of $50, so give it a try. With $50 on our CDS Cloud, you can run for quite a while without incurring any charges. I've also shown you that the migration is not hard. However, you need to pick the right target. There are certain guidelines to identify the right targets. Among others, does the application use an ORM? Does the application use stored procedures that are written in PLSQL? And are there certain management tools that Oracle introduced that are not absolutely required? Leverage the migration portal and the EDB Postgres Cloud Database service so you can do this in a very agile, very, very quick way. There's really not a whole lot of excuses not to give it a try. Look at the output of the extraction script. You can inspect it. You can make sure that what you're uploading to our migration portal is something that you're comfortable with. Look at the download, again, to understand what changes did we make. Did we apply any repair handlers, etc.? Are you comfortable with those changes? And then just simply use, let's say, pgadmin and the EDB migration toolkit to get your data, your schema definitions, and your data migrated up to the cloud. For even a significant database, let's say 20, 30, 50 gigabytes, or even 100 gigabytes, that's going to be really, really straightforward. Okay? So at this point, we're ready for questions. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to see if any questions have come in.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark. We do have a few questions for you here today before we conclude today's session. The first question, is this the same Oracle compatibility that I would get on premises, or is this something else?
No, this is exactly the same Oracle compatibility. In fact, this is exactly the same Postgres. And that is something that we believe is really, really important because you can confidently, let's say, test and develop and do your QA and all your verifications in the cloud. If your company roles, for example, require that production systems all run in a different data center, you can do all your work up in the cloud, use all the agility and flexibility, and the stuff will just work. This is not a fork of anything that will run on-premise. This is exactly the same thing.
All right. Thank you very much. The second question, can this be integrated in the AWS portal, or do I need to go to EDB?
You go to EDB to use this. You can run EDB Postgres Advanced Server just through EC2. So you can just create a virtual machine on EC2. You can download an RPM or an installer from EDB and install it on EC2 if you don't want to use this portal. But in that case, you will not have the easy access to high availability, failover, read scalability, etc. That only comes with the CDS service.
Great, thanks. When will the beta end?
We're starting to get very good feedback from the market, so we are expecting that the beta will end in January.
And the next question, does CDS offer database cloning?
Yes, absolutely. So you can just, it's one of the buttons. Let me just see if I can go back to that. Let me just go back to CDS here. To this portal here. And one of the options in here is that you can just select one of the instances and make a clone. Okay, so I can just use this to manually clone a cluster. Okay, so that's absolutely built in. It's a very good question because that's a service that a lot of our customers use to support developers, QA. You have a running production system. You want to make some kind of a change. You make a clone, and then you develop your changes on there, and then you merge them back into the production system.
All right. What kind of encryption is used during the setup?
It's an on-disk encryption, so it's a 256-bit encryption. But if you need to know the exact algorithm, I'll need to get back to you on that.
When will CDS be in other AWS regions?
Q1 at the latest. We're shooting for earlier regions, and again, we would be very happy to hear which regions would be of most interest.
Will I be able to see the charges incurred daily during the free trial?
Yes, you are. So again, we would go to CDS here. I would go to my account tab and my current usage tab. So in here, this usage tab is updated on an hourly basis. So every hour we would check, have you used any new capabilities? So you're never going to be surprised by your end of month bill.
Great. Next question is, when creating a cluster manually, there was an IOP field. Can you expand on how this works?
IOP is basically provisioned IOPS on AWS. So you would set your provisioned IOPS to a higher rate if you want to make sure that you have guaranteed provisioned throughput to the disk. That's an important capability when you look at at a database, because a database tends to be very, very IO intensive. So AWS has provided certain guidelines as to how you set the IOPS. We're by default not setting it very high because provisioning IOPS also costs money.
Great. Another question is, am I really the administrator for my databases on CDS?
Correct. Yes. You have all the alter system commands are all available for you. You can access the data files, etc. So yes, everything that you can do through Postgres is available for you.
Great. And just a couple more here. Can I run my production workload here before CDS beta ends?
Yes, we are committed to making that work for you. Please give us a heads up if that's what you're planning to do.
Is there a free tier option?
Currently there is no free tier option yet. We are planning to introduce a free tier in January of next year, potentially even earlier. Right now, what I would suggest, if a free tier is a requirement for you, use the $50 credit or contact us to participate in the $250 free beta program. That'll cover you for quite a while.
Great, and we have just time for one last question. Can CDS and Migration Portal talk to each other so I need not download and spin a cluster manually?
By sometime in January, yes. Currently, you have to download and then use a tool like pgadmin or Toad Edge to create the cluster manually.
Thank you very much, Marc. I apologize for those questions that we're unable to get to today, but that is all the time that we have. I'd like to thank everyone for joining the webinar, and we will be sharing the recording along with the slides with you as soon as possible. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day.